The strategic forecast of success for a business is determined by the level of competency when it comes to execution of any entrepreneur. The secret sauce of execution when it comes to business operation is an entrepreneur's ability to remain disciplined and focused on achieving the tactical necessities to have a business run well. I want to inject some statistical evidence into the heartbeat of this conversation. According to my friends over at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, they report that 20% of all new businesses fail within the first 2 years of being open. 45% fail within the first 5 years of being open, and 65% fail within the first 10 years. Only 25% of new businesses make it past 15 years. Meanwhile, my friends over at The Economist say that only 8% of new businesses know how to scale effectively, mainly because they follow a predictable pattern to achieve long-term success. A business also succeeds because its founders and leaders are lifelong learners and do not allow their preconceived notions to interfere with their business dynamics. Leaders who develop the right habits and keep their business agile in fluctuating environments. And since an enterprise is a reflection of its leaders, its other stakeholders practice the same habits too. This is a key differentiator of successful companies. My friend Anthony Franco knows a thing or two about launching and scaling businesses. And now he's on a mission to help other founders do the exact same thing. With 7 companies launched and 6 successfully exited, including 2 public companies, Franco is eager to offer his entrepreneurial insights across tech, AI, customer goods, services, and manufacturing. He also hosts a podcast entitled How to Founder, where he and his co-hosts dive deep on practical advice and challenges which founders face. And Franco joined me this week to share his entrepreneurial insights on how to successfully launch, scale, and ultimately exit businesses to create an entrepreneurial empire. This is a conversation that you can't afford to miss if you want to be successful in entrepreneurship. So, without further delay, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. My friend, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn about your experience in business, my friend. Great to see you, and happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday.
Absolutely. Now, Anthony, I know that your professional claim to fame is scaling, selling, and launching businesses, my friend, and now you're on a mission to help other founders do the same, my friend. So I wonder if we can start our conversation by you telling me why you love what you do and what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
Well, I can tell you why, but I can't tell you if I'm fab. I don't think I'm fabulous. um, so my why. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and essentially what that means is that I'm basically unemployable any other way than being my own boss. And I've started 7 companies, exited 6 of them so far, and it's hard and it's lonely. And being an entrepreneur is exceptionally lonely, and there's a lot of things that you don't really learn or understand until you're really kind of in it. You know, you can understand that somebody tells you the pool is cold, but until you jump into it, you don't really know. And that's really what entrepreneurship is about. And I decided with a friend of mine to try to make it less lonely and less chaotic. And so I started my own podcast called How to Founder with Chris Franks and I, and we just want to kind of educate with our experience and have guests on to talk about tactics and strategies to help founders make it less less chaotic and know that they have a community behind them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anthony, what do you think it means to have entrepreneurial prosperity? What do you think that means to you?
Entrepreneurial prosperity. So I fundamentally believe that entrepreneurship is the entrepreneurs are the pioneers of economic growth. And you know, without entrepreneurship, there would be no innovation. Like all great innovations come from great entrepreneurs. And so entrepreneurial prosperity is just a country, a system that supports that entrepreneurial spirit, and then the entrepreneurs that want to support and carve a name for themselves in the world.
Yeah, and Anthony, I'm curious to ask you, for anyone that wants to launch into entrepreneurship, I'm curious, what are 3 essential questions people should ask themselves before they want to start a business or enter the field of entrepreneurship? What would be your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, so I get asked quite a bit. I do quite a bit of speaking, and you know, things here in Colorado and sometimes across the country. That the most common question I ask is, should I be an entrepreneur? I'm thinking about it. What do you have to say? And I basically tell them, don't do it. When somebody comes to me and says, I'm thinking about being an entrepreneur, I tell them, don't. It's the odds are stacked against you. I know this kind of contradicts what I said earlier. I do think entrepreneurship is what drives growth, and it is great for some people, but for the most part, it requires such a level of effort and loneliness, and I've said that multiple times, loneliness, and the resource. You don't have the resources or the effort. The odds are that you're not going to make it. It's going to impact your social life. It's going to impact your marriage if you're married, and so you shouldn't do it. And then I get probably 80% of the folks that I talk to kind of walk away dejected, and kind of a cold water splashed in their face. And then there's that 10 to 20% that look at me like I'm nuts. That think, what are you talking about? I don't have it. Like, they look at me like they don't have a choice. Like, they're not asking me if they should be an entrepreneur. They're just saying I am, and I'm going to ignore you. And really, those are the people that should be the entrepreneurs. If I can talk you out of being an entrepreneur, then you absolutely shouldn't do it. So you're asking me for the 3. The first one is, don't do it. It's too hard, and you're likely going to fail. And I know that's a sobering piece of advice, but I think it's a really critical. The second thing I would tell founders is the biggest risk to you failing is you. It's your ego. It's your thought that what you know in your head is right. In reality, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to understand your customers and you have to really deeply understand the pain that you're trying to solve before you start launching products and launching services. And those are really my top two. I don't really necessarily have a third. There's a bunch of thirds.
That could be a whole nother podcast in itself, my friend.
That's really what my How to Founder podcast is about. Like everything third is like we have 180 topics that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other side of the spectrum, Anthony, I want to talk to you about ambitious leaders and leadership. As you said, not everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur, but for those that are, what do you think are the qualities of ambitious leaders, and how do you think it serves them well in business? What are your thoughts there?
So you specifically want me to chat about, I think what you're asking me is, what are the qualities of an entrepreneur, like an ambitious entrepreneur?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually really difficult question to answer. It gets into this like question of what is an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur could be anything from somebody buying a franchise in it, like a State Farm agent is essentially an entrepreneur. They're running their own office, and for those folks, my advice, not being an entrepreneur, probably doesn't make sense, right? Because they're buying into a system and they can follow the process and the practice. When I talk about entrepreneurship, I'm talking about the ones that are trying to build something from scratch, from zero, to go from 0 to 1 to 10 to 100. And for those folks, the best entrepreneurs I've seen are polymaths. They're able to build a product, whether it's in software or a services oriented product or even a physical product. They're also able to sell, which is an incredible attribute. They also have an uncommon amount of persistence. So when everything's telling them to stop, they're able to somehow push through and get through it. Like all the famous entrepreneurs, any entrepreneur that you can list has hit some sort of adversity that has told them to quit, and they have not quit. They also have this remarkable ability to not feel shame. So what I mean by that is they can stand up and say something that nobody's ever said before without fear of somebody calling them a fool. And then I think the number one thing that you need, especially if you're this visionary type of entrepreneur, that you want to change the world or you want to change an industry, you need a really good second. You need a really good, as the EOS would, Entrepreneur Operating System would say, you need a really good integrator, somebody that will follow you and help you build your vision. At least one, and hopefully not many.
Yeah, Anthony, as you mentioned, you're an expert in selling and scaling businesses, but I want to ask you about the importance of scaling a business, and what are the keys to scaling a business with discipline? What are your thoughts there?
So my thoughts about scaling a business with discipline. So scale equals sales. And most people, in fact, almost everybody, even great salespeople, discipline or sales is a grind. So it's constant follow up. It's multi-channel. It's in-person events. It's online connections. It's forcing yourself to interact with people one-on-one, and then following up, persistent follow-up. And so that requires not a certain level, a tremendous amount of discipline to do that, not just for a week, or a month for years upon years in order to actually be good at sales. And it's also this notion that your first sale is really important, your 10th sale is really important, your 20th, like making sure that you value every single customer as you're growing the same way you valued your first. So scaling is essentially building those customer relationships, and those need to be authentic, and those need to be built with, like you said, discipline. Looking for like a tactic, it's very industry specific. So I have tons of tactics on scaling, but it's like if you're running an online business, it's different than if you're running an HVAC business. So it's very industry specific.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Anthony, I'm also curious to ask you about the process of exiting a business. A lot of people are hesitant to do that sometimes because it's their vision, and most of the time, if you're exiting a business, in some level, you're admitting that your dream is over, but sometimes it can also lead to other opportunities. So, what do you think is the mindset founders have to have if they want to exit a business? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think first of all, you are going to exit your business. Like, eventually, you're going to exit. All you're talking about is, I mean, you're either the business is either going to close, or you're not going to be here anymore. Like we all have a finite life, so at some point you will be exiting your business, and so exit planning is essentially just planning what that looks like and kind of wrapping your head around the timing, you taking control of how you exit. And so the entrepreneurs and founders and owners don't usually start with an exit in mind. I know venture capital will tell you, I need to know your exit plan, but most founders don't do that. But having an exit plan means that you have control over it, and also gives you some options, right? So if you're planning your exit, if you plan your exit appropriately, you can truly leave a legacy by bringing people up in your organization that can take over the business as you start to bow out. It also, I mean, right now you may not be ready for an exit because you're still having fun and you're passionate about it and it's producing you a good revenue stream. But at some point, you're going to want to start not putting in 80 hours a week. You're going to want to start going to 40, then to 20. And exit is not just about selling your business. It's also about how do you make the business not reliant on you. And then there's the other tactical blocking and tackling, like how do you properly keep your books? Are you properly tax planning for an exit and wealth managing for an exit? Are you properly categorizing your receivables and payables in a way that looks better for a buyer versus worse? How much personal stuff are you taking out of the business? Because that might be good for tax reasons, but also hinder your ability to get a good multiple on an exit. So planning for it ahead of time, even if you're not ready to exit now, planning for it 5 years ahead of time is a really good strategy to really start thinking about, the things that you need to do in order to get your business properly suited for an exit. There's also not selling. You can also convert your business into an employee owned, like ESOP. That's also another great way. Or a lot of family owned businesses think about, their son's going to take it over, and a lot of times that doesn't work out. So if you have a plan to exit your business by handing it over to the next generation, your family, you might want to have a backup option in case they're not interested in doing it.
Yeah, and you brought up something interesting. So I'll follow up with this question, Anthony, in terms of outsourcing responsibilities or delegating responsibilities to other people within a business. Part of being an entrepreneur is knowing when to relinquish control and getting some of your time back. So tell me about the mindset or strategies or sort of state of mind that you have when you delegate responsibilities or tasks in your businesses, because it can give part of your time back, can it?
Yeah, I mean, if you delegation is the master key to scale. Because you can't scale, and it's probably for me personally, it's one of the hardest. It's really hard to let go of a system or a process and give it to somebody else, because one, it likely takes more time to give it to somebody else than it does to just do it yourself. It takes you more time to train somebody up on something than to just do it yourself. So there's a time suck and an investment of time that you're going to need to do. Also, they're going to screw it up. They're going to do it differently than you do. And that is very difficult for some founders to allow the people that choose to work with them, their team members, to make mistakes and give them the space and the room to make mistakes. But fundamentally, it is so freeing and so enabling to have a great team around you, where you essentially, the sports analogy is, you need to stop being a player and become a coach. And I am, it's at heart, a player. So it's really difficult for me to not play on the field and delegate things, but that's really the mindset. You need to become a coach and allow your team to be the players in your organization, which is a whole different skill set, and you have to kind of treat it like a craft. But it will free your business up for growth, and it'll make your personal life a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. And, my friend, I know that your expertise spans a variety of industries, from technology to manufacturing to customer goods and artificial intelligence. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on effective leadership and what it means to be a hands-on leader. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, I take inspiration from I do take inspiration from the obvious sources, right? It's Jobs, Musk, Benioff, somewhat Bezos, and if you look at, they have this interesting balance where they are intimately knowledgeable of the details of the business. Elon walks the factory floors, and that doesn't mean that he necessarily tells people what to do. But when he's making decisions, he understands the impact and the ripple effect of those decisions. So when you talk about being a hands-on leader, once you become a leader of an organization of, let's say, 25 people or more, you're switching from that player to coach mentality. You're also switching from you're switching to servant. Like, your job is to serve the people that choose to work there, and your job is to clear obstacles and remove bottlenecks and make sure proper communication is happening, and make sure they have the resources that they need in order to get their jobs done. And a big part of that is understanding their jobs at an intimate level. And Steve Jobs was famous for that. Bezos was famous for that. Like, every great leader that has built these huge organizations, they're still pretty involved in the weeds.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anthony, I've got a two-part question for you, and it's a bit of a passion question for me personally. So, Anthony, I was born with cerebral palsy, and at the age of 9, I was told by a doctor that I wouldn't be able to walk without assistance for the rest of my life because of the severity of my disability. And now I work with businesses as a speaker to tell them the importance of hiring folks with disabilities and the advantages that can bring to their business. And I'm curious to ask you this two-part question about, how do you think we can foster more opportunities for folks with disabilities within entrepreneurship? And then Secondarily, how do you think they can make the workplace more innovative for founders and organizations? What are your thoughts there?
Well, so first of all, I don't think, look, for small businesses, right, which is, and when I talk small business, I'm talking businesses with people under 500 people. And that doesn't may not seem small, but statistically, that's still a small business. For those organizations, and especially those that are under 100, there's not a lot of awareness on even how to approach um, people, finding people with disabilities to come onto your workplace. And I think there needs to, that's kind of on us as business owners, but also I would love to see some more campaigning around where we can find folks to bring into organizations, because people with disabilities have certain advantages when bringing innovation into the workspace. One, um, they have to they've learned problem solving skills, right? You have to overcome things that most people don't, which gives you this amazing ability to overcome really difficult challenges and persevere through them. And that just adds a unique perspective, a diverse perspective in in an organization that you may be lacking or maybe could use more of.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Anthony, revisiting the first half of our conversation, where you were talking about deterring entrepreneurs from being entrepreneurs. And, the data bears that out. Between 20 and 40% of all businesses fail within the first 2 years. And I think it's something like 15 to 65% fail within the first 5 years. So I'm curious to ask you about creating a roadmap for entrepreneurs to avoid common mistakes. What would you put on that roadmap and why, my friend?
The most important thing about being an entrepreneur is know thyself. Be very, you have to assume everything you're doing is wrong. You have to have this unusual mix of paranoia that everything that you're doing is wrong, and this unusually high level of optimism that you're going to figure it out. But that requires curiosity, not only in the market and your customers and the product, but also in yourself. You have to continually explore how to improve yourself, which means you're literally going out and seeking criticism. If you are somebody that finds it hard to take a critique, you're likely not going to succeed. If you are somebody that is actively pursuing how can I get better, feedback on what can I do better, and then being able to apply that, you have a much higher chance of winning.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, my friend, I'm curious to ask you about your definition of what it means to have internal motivation in business. What do you think it means to be personally motivated in business?
Um, Again, I'm going to bring him up again. Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs said it best, and I don't remember the exact quote, but the fundamental piece of it is that if you're not doing something that you love, you will quit. It's entrepreneurship is so hard that if you're working on something that you don't believe in, that you don't have passion for, or can't find passion for, it the obstacles are too great to overcome it. Like it requires it requires an unreasonableness of working through problems. That if you don't love what you're doing, if you can't find inspiration in where you're trying to go, um, then don't do it. And that inspiration, that vision that you set for yourself and where you're trying to get, and loving the thing that you're doing is the thing that will motivate you. You can't force you can get motivated to go to the gym, right? You can get motivated to go to the gym um, for so long, unless you have a passion for having health, unless you have, it's not about going to the gym every day that drives your discipline. It's that you want to be healthy. You want to live longer. You want to look good in a bathing suit. Those are the things that drive the passion to go to the gym, not the day-to-day discipline of it. So you just got to continually remind yourself of where you're going, which should drive the why you're doing it.
Yeah, and answer that, I'm going to ask you an unconventional question. How do you think failure in business can lead to opportunity?
How do I think? So there is no such thing as entrepreneurship without failure. Every entrepreneur is constantly failing and learning. Every single thing that you do, every guess that you make, every sales call that you're on, you could have done it better. Every sales call that you don't close is a failure that you can learn from. So failure, the best story of this is the famous Thomas Edison story. He was asked, after trying to make a light bulb for years, 1,000 failures, a reporter asked him, how does it feel to have failed making a light bulb for so long? And he's like, I haven't failed. I just successfully understood how not to make a light bulb 1,000 times. And I love that mindset. It's like, yes, I have failed, but I've learned something on how not to do it. Not that it's not this overwhelming sense of like I'm a failure. There's a difference from saying you are a failure and that you have failed. You have to expect and embrace failure and learn from it, and then just try not to repeat the same mistake again.
Yeah, absolutely. And one way we do that is by building relationships. I believe that forming relationships and meeting people where they are is the heartbeat of a successful entrepreneur or leader of any organization, my friend. So tell me about forming successful relationships and really meeting people where they are. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, the definitive guide on this is Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I've read that probably 4 times, and probably deserve another. It probably deserves me reading it again, because it's a constant reminder of understanding how to build those relationships. The book title sounds like your job is to manipulate people into liking you. That's really not it. It's about developing this genuine curiosity for what people do and what motivates them and why they're doing what they're doing, and then also this servant heart about like, how can I help you along your journey. So you could do that online, sure. You could do that through podcasts and Zoom calls, but it's much better to do it in person. Go to meetup.com, find local events, go to your chamber of commerce, go get involved in Toastmasters, go find places that you can go and connect with people in real life. There's no real substitution for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about selling or exiting businesses earlier, and I wanted to drill down on how do you think we can do that gracefully, and what steps do people really have to take to really know when it's time to exit a business?
Timing. So I'll kind of try to take that in reverse order. So timing is exceptionally complicated because it's very personal. It basically, if you're the owner of a business, timing is about when you're ready to let go, and that could be a financial decision. It can be a retirement decision. It can be you don't have the energy anymore. It can be health related. There's all kinds of reasons why people make the decision to exit. The process, the first thing you need to do is you probably need to talk to an expert. You probably need to talk to somebody that has helped other founders exit businesses. And most the M&A advisors or brokers will just have that phone call conversation. So just pick up the phone and call, like just shoot me an email and set up a call and I'll help you. But it doesn't have to be me. It could be any broker or M&A advisor that's been around for a while. They'll have the conversation with you to talk about how do you start exit planning, because it's very personal. And forgive me, remind me, I didn't fully answer your question, but I missed the first part of it. I don't remember it.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to know the steps that business owners can take to exit a business with grace, and when do you know when it's time to exit a business, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Well, the win is, I always take the win as more, there's not like you're not looking at a clock or a calendar date. You're just like, you can predict that you're going to not have passion for the business in a year. That's really the time where you should be at least, it's probably too late at that point. So you need to kind of predict when you're not going to be able to put the same energy in that you have. And that might be a time to exit, unless you've been able to already exit yourself from the business by handing it over to other folks. But if the business requires you to be in it full time and you're starting to get tired and you can proceed, that's the time to really think about exit. The steps, first, make sure your books are clean. The number one obstacle in selling your business and selling businesses is that the financials are funky or wonky, and there's a lot of intermixing of personal and business operations. So clean up your books, make sure they're really solid. Close your books every month. Like that's very tactical, but I would say the first step is make sure your books are really clean. The second step, and this can be done in parallel, is talk to an expert. Go out and find businesses that have exited in your space and find out what the multiples are. Also, start looking for ways to if you're not planning on sticking with the business once you exit it, once you sell it, then you need to start making plans and start handing over some responsibilities so the business can operate without you.
Yeah, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, I know that you've got some favorite hacks for scaling a business quickly, so I'm wondering if you can share those with me this morning.
So some hacks on scaling a business. There's this thing called the growth hack, and there's a lot of books that will talk to you about how to growth hack or growth marketing your business. The problem with growth hacks, is that once it's used once, it no longer works. Like one company's going to do it and they're going to be successful with it, and then it's kind of, the hack is kind of closed. I'll give you an example of this. Airbnb's growth hack was scraping Craigslist for rentals and going out and talking to those renters about becoming Airbnb. So they literally went out and used somebody else's information to grow their business. But you can't nobody can do that anymore. Craigslist has closed that ability down. So, the most common growth hack advice is if it's being talked about as a growth hack, it's dead already. You have to kind of this is where you need to be really creative and think of areas where your customers that aren't intuitive to your business, and then go meet them there. And that can be all kinds of different ways. And if you want, I have an anecdotal story around that, something that we did in my last company.
Yeah, please share. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so and this is a good example of how it might work one time, but it won't continue to work, especially for all businesses. So So one of the companies I launched was a physical product company. It was think of us as office supplies, but like things that mount to your wall, big huge whiteboards. And we were trying to find business. What is the hypothesis was we need to meet companies that are moving or that are renovating their space. So those were our ideal customers. Those were your ICPs, right? So how do you go and find folks in an easy way that are about to move? And at what point when they're moving, at what point in the build process is the right point for us to approach them? And we came down to the fact after talking to customers that essentially we're looking for buying things that hang on walls at the time they were installing carpet. Once they were putting new carpeting in, either into the new space or into their existing space, that's the time when they really should be thinking about putting new whiteboards in. And so what we did is we hired somebody to go around and chase carpet installers, and just they go to a carpet installer warehouse, follow the vans around to where they every morning, follow the vans around to where they were going, write that business down, and then we'd go and start cold calling into that business. It was actually quite successful. But it's not a hack that you could write down and replicate. It is just that creative thinking around when can you meet your customer at the right time for their buying decision. And you just have to think about it in a creative way like that.
Yeah, I'm also curious to ask you about improving communication to increase lead generation in business. What are you, for anyone watching or listening to this who really has a great idea in business, but it's not so great on the communication side, how do you think we can improve our communication in business to increase lead generation? What are your thoughts there?
Interesting question. So I don't know. I don't know if you could be an effective founder and not be an effective communicator. So the first step is to treat communication as a craft, both in person and written. Um, Over time, have started, like I didn't start out this way early in my entrepreneurship career, but now people know me as a word snob. Like I care about every single word that we use in a communication. I care very deeply about the mission statement and the wording of it, and the crafting of it, and positioning statements. So you have to treat it. Go buy a how to write book and treat your communication as a craft. That's number one. Number two is I like to look at really bad examples and kind of write a list of don't do that for myself. So if you're getting everybody's getting communication on email and LinkedIn, trying to sell you something, and there's a reason why you delete them or don't respond, is because it's bad or ineffective communication. Try to discover why that stuff is bad and why it's turning you off. Most likely it's because it's not authentic and it's not personal. So the best thing that you can do, first of all, is not try to automate your outreach, especially in the beginning. In the beginning, just try to have authentic, just say, when you're talking to somebody on LinkedIn or over an email, just say, hey, I'm doing this new thing. I could really use some input. And do it like you're having a conversation with a person or a friend standing right next to you. If it sounds like a marketer wrote it, you have failed. If it sounds like you're friendly, but not overly friendly, not overly familiar, but if you're friendly and seeking genuine advice or input, you'll have a lot more success in your communication. So I think those are two really, really important points. One, you got to be good at communication. And two, it's got to be authentic. And by authentic, I mean not like it's written like a marketer.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anthony, I've got a couple questions left for you. And the first one has to do with maximizing business and life potential. What do you think it means to maximize potential both in business and in life, my friend?
Well, you're talking about work-life balance, and you're talking to the wrong schmuck. I don't I don't know many entrepreneurs that do a good job balancing work and life. Um, it's a constant struggle because there's weeks that you're working 80, 120 hours and you completely ignore your family, and then you try to make it up in the margins. I wish I was a more like I look at people that have that work life balance, normal lives, and I envy them because I don't have it. You're just so I don't have a good question for answer for you on that because it's a constant struggle. I it's a so people that have good work life balance, it's kind of effortless. They do it naturally. I don't naturally. It has to be a conscious effort to go and break away from my work and go spend time with my girls or spend time with my wife. To their frustration, thankfully I have great kids and a great wife that helps me through it. So, but I honestly, it's a constant struggle for me. So I don't have good advice here. The answer is I don't know.
Well, that's an honest and authentic answer, and I have to tell you, if you don't mind, my friend, I'm a bit in the same way, and what I have started doing is consciously blocking off time in my schedule because I have a hard time saying no to people. So
Yeah.
the new rule that I've developed is if it's not in my schedule, I don't agree to do it, and I consciously sort of block off half an hour to 45 minutes every Friday. That's why I say that Friday is my favorite day of the week to sort of recenter myself and my life and sort of come back down to center. So I hope that is somewhat helpful for you,
It,
my friend.
it certainly is, and I do something similar. Like I'll block off. I have Tuesday and Thursday mornings where I block off with where we sit down for an hour and just we do devotionals together. But we do something similar to that. But still, I would still say my life is not balanced.
Yeah, and since you brought that up, I'll just follow up quickly with this. How do you think entrepreneurs can avoid burnout, my friend?
um, you can't.
Fair enough.
It happens. There is a point at which you've experienced it enough to where you're like, okay, so once you hit a point where you hit burnout, you can recognize that feeling, and you're either going to need to take a step back and just take it like when I'm feeling burned out, I literally just go, I walk away, I say, I'm going to take the next day off. I'm going to reset, recalibrate, and move. But burnout is part of the process. You can't avoid it. You get in the flow and work through a problem and hammer at it, hammer at it until you burn yourself out. That's okay. You recover from it fairly quickly, especially as an entrepreneur. You lose your passion for a second, you take a day, and then you find a way to regain it.
Yeah, it's sort of my way of dealing with adversity, my friend. I give myself a 1 day rule to sort of
Yeah,
reflect on my feelings, and then I process, and then I move forward, right?
exactly. That's exactly how you do it. Burnout is not permanent; it's temporary. So just know that when you're hitting it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anthony, my final question for you this morning is if I was to throw you a lifetime achievement party and I asked the people who knew you best to give a toast about you on how you've impacted their life, my friend, what do you think your friends or those who know you best would say? And how do you want your legacy to be defined from a personal and professional standpoint, my friend?
I just saw Mike Tyson get asked a question on X from a young reporter, and she says, "What do you want your legacy to be?" And his answer was brilliant. He's like, "Legacy is ego," and he says, "I don't care about my legacy. I just want to live my life, live a good life." And it was such a humble answer. So I guess the I guess I would want, if somebody was toasting me, I would want them to say that I have a servant heart and that I try to be humble. I have strong opinions, but I'm still humble about them. So, um, and my first, I hope that if somebody were to toast me, they would say something like, um, "He lived to serve," and and if and entrepreneurs, his employees, his family. If they said about that, then I think I've done my job on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Anthony, tell me if people want to get connected with you and all your entrepreneurial endeavors, what's the best way they can do that?
So LinkedIn, just linkedin.com/in/Anthony Franco. So just find me on LinkedIn. That's a great way to get connected with. You can follow me there, and our podcasts are there. And then also we have a podcast website. It's just how to founder, HOWTO, howtofounder.com. And it's available on YouTube. We stream live on LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. So those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
Well, fabulous, Anthony. I want to thank you for your leadership and dedication to furthering entrepreneurial prosperity and for joining me to engage in conversation. It's most appreciated, my friend.
Kevin, it was great to be on your podcast. Thank you so much for hosting me.